Hey, welcome back to the channel, Untitled Projects. Today is another kind of normal day. We're reviewing another plane. There's so many planes coming out at the moment, it's mad. There's one or two a week, which is, kind of a lot to handle, but it's fun. And we've got something called the Trinidad TB-21 GT from a little company called Lionheart Creations, and they've been doing a lot of stuff for a long time. They've done a lot of aircraft for FSX, for P3D, and all the way back to FS2004 vintage. So it sounds like they've got a lot of experience. But it's kind of pricey, and it comes in at €25, $30, or £22, and that's kind of pricey in comparison to a lot of the other aircraft that are coming into the marketplace, especially from Coronado, where you can pick something up for about, anywhere between kind of £10 and £15. That's pretty high quality and built specifically for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now this aircraft is clearly ported from FSX because I found their FSX version and it's kind of the same. But apart from that, let's briefly talk about the plane. So it's apparently a sleek high-performance French four-seater by Sakata Aerospace, which is located in France. And this is the supercharged edition, which means that it's got 250 horsepower. That sounds pretty good. So it can pretty much cruise at about 200 miles an hour, which I like the sound of. It's beginning to sound a little bit like the TBM, which incidentally is also related to this aircraft, and is effectively its big brother, or sister. And according to the developer description, it has something called instrument pods, which I haven't really heard of, but apparently it's a fashion thing from kind of around the 80s, where they were trying to emulate the Lotus and the Lamborghinis of the time. Anyway, what do you get for your money? Well, you get 22 liveries, which is a lot, and I've looked at them all and they're quite nice, so no complaints there. You get 3 different interiors, which obviously come with those liveries, so you can't change those interiors individually. You get a disappearing control yoke, which is always fun for visibility. They kind of had to do it though, because you're not going to be able to click some switches otherwise. That's a Coronado thing. And apparently extreme high-res textures to maybe screw your FPS up. But from what I've seen, and I'll take you through it, they don't look that high-res. And they have given us some ASBO high-end avionics and GPS systems, which is always nice to have because you kind of would expect that. And these sounds are also from ASBO too, and they don't seem too bad. And you get folding armrests, which kind of made it sound like it was a really awesome addition, but it's just so you can see the controls. Nice. So I guess more importantly, what do you not get for your money? And you can't open the doors, which is kind of annoying because it's kind of pricey and you can't open the doors. Come on. Anyway, let's get into the meat of the video, and we're going to do what we always do every time at Untitled Projects. History time, obviously. And then we're going to go down, check out that cold and dark, and have a look at the cockpit, have a look at the graphics, and take it for a flight and see what those flight dynamics are. Let's get into the history part. During the mid-1970s, French aircraft company Sakata, founded in 1966, commenced design work on what would become the TB family. Key ambition of this new product line was to entirely replace the firm's existing and highly successful Rally series of aircraft. On the 23rd of September 1977, a first prototype powered by a 160 horsepower Avco Lycoming 0320 engine flew its maiden flight. But on the 15th of December in that same year, tragedy struck and that aircraft was lost to spin testing. But this didn't deter the progression of the aircraft. And in 1979, initial entry models, the TB9 Tipico and the TB10 Tobago, were certified. Further improvements and modifications were made, and in 1981 the first delivery of a production TB20 was delivered to a German customer. Although the TB was often privately owned, its main use was as a trainer, and it was extensively adopted by flight schools all over the world. But success came from its build process, and Sakata had a straightforward assembly philosophy and only built aircraft after an order had been received. This allowed for customer-specified modifications and additional equipment to be added during the build, creating highly customizable aircraft. The TB gained traction, and although heavier and slower than its direct competition, had become known for its comfort due to its larger fuselage and airy cockpit. Sakata was becoming a success, and in 1988 released the TBM, which rapidly became an overnight sensation, which led to the production of multiple variants and improved models, often incorporating more powerful engines and new avionics. This in turn allowed the company to spend more time improving their current TB series, and in 1990, an improved model of the TB family designated as the TB-G2 was developed. At this point, Sakata had money to spare and officially launched its Generation 2 range, having just received a major US order for 79 aircraft. But then the tragedy of 9/11 struck and the aviation industry was thrown into turmoil. And with no new orders on the books, Sakata attempted cost saving by trying to outsource manufacturing to Eastern Europe or Canada. This failed to materialise, and Sakata was made defunct in 2015. Between 1975 and 2012, over 2,150 were built, and it's still used widely today as a trainer in civil operations and as a military aircraft. Sakata was eventually acquired by DEA, and although the TB series is no longer produced, the TBM is still in full production. Right, we're back on the ground for a little review, and we are in the west of France, at a little place called La Loubertable, which, of course, every time I use these aircraft, I go back to their birthplaces, and this is where this aircraft was born, apparently. Outside of Tarbes, which is a city or a town, I'm not sure, quite nearby, which is pretty big, not far from Toulouse, this is a guess that it came from here. I'm not entirely sure, couldn't find the information, but it's pretty nice, and it's right at the edge of the Pyrenees, so this is just a beautiful area of France. Never been, but lovely. Look at these houses. Someone's done a little bit of work here. Very nice. Anyway, so let's have a little walk around the TB-21. And as you've already seen, you get an absolute shed load of liveries for your cash. And you get 22, which is pretty good. I've gone for one that looks unbelievably battered. And this is the only one in all of the liveries out of the 22 that looks like this. And it's pretty funny, really, because this just reminds me of all these trainers that are just absolutely screwed because they've been so used. All this metal flaking off and everything. So let's have a look at some of these graphics. It's not a bad looking aircraft. I think from distance it's pretty nice. It's very kind of blended or smooth, if that's the way to talk about it. You can see that there's some slightly strange lines here where some of those texture wraps have not quite met up the way they should, and they've stretched a little bit. And that's a bit of a theme inside this aircraft as well. So definitely not as nice as the Piaggio or the PA-44, which I think are my favourite aircraft in terms of detail, the way they look on the outside, the way they look on the inside. But apart from that, this is a pretty unique looking plane. It's not a bad looking plane in terms of its reality, its physicality. It's kind of cool. And it's got that kind of vintage feel. So yeah, not bad. But let's pop inside and we'll have a look, and you're going to see that the textures aren't as good as they should be, I think. Right inside, and straight away you can tell it's an old aircraft. It's 80s. And I usually like that, but there's something I find really hard to look at here, and it's the leather. The leather is just kind of overkill, and the carpet as well. I don't know if it's just an 80s thing that's making me recede from this, but yeah, I just don't like that. And I think some of these leather textures, they kind of look too big. There's some wrapping issues again, some little weird bits going on. The carpet is just like a stock texture, and yeah, I just don't like the leather. But you know what? Maybe that's just the way the plane actually looked, and it's true to life. But yeah, that's just how I think about it. The design is not really down my street. Now, if you look at the Piaggio is a beautiful vintage plane, and I think that looks lovely. But yeah, now you can see we've got our modular instrument panels here, and this was a thing. This was just a design trend of the day. that Lamborghinis and Lotus used. So this was borrowed and used inside the TB-21 here. Don't really like them that much. It's just my opinion, but not really my vibe. It's just so thick, these bezels. Anyway, and obviously we've got two instrument panels here. We've got one here and one here, and this one does look towards you, slightly angled, as you can see. So this is obviously used quite heavily as a trainer, and I think that's why we have this instrument panel on the left here, which has some duplicates across. Anyway, done with the graphics. Let's go through the dials. So there's some quite unique little aspects to this aircraft. And to start with, all of the dials are your standard, your artificial horizon, your speedometer, which is obviously in knots, your airspeed indicator. It's all pretty basic stuff. It's all normal. You've got your vertical speed here, which it climbs pretty well between 1,500 and 2,000 a minute at about, I would say, about between 120 and 140 knots. So that's pretty good, actually. It's a relatively powerful aircraft. And then you've got everything kind of organized into areas. So you can turn off the steering wheel. I think it's called the yoke, not the steering wheel. So everything is in quite well organized areas. So here's all your electrics and all your lighting. And here, up here, this is quite unique, is the oil pressure, oil temperature, fuel quantity, and voltmeter as well. So that's very useful. We've also got volts over here, and we also have fuel down here and fuel flow. So all very useful. And then we've got all of our lights up here to tell you when you've got your taxi lights on, your pitot, your fuel pump, oil pressure, parking brake, fuel off, all of this kind of stuff. You can test it. It's good, but you've got to turn it on. This is your GPS. Oh, I can turn that on without even having the electrics on. Nice. So, and in the middle here, we've got all our GPS panels and all of our radio equipment. I never use that, as always, because I just like to fly by eye. But that's just me. A lot of people will like to use this. So this is all supposed to be in working order. Don't quote me on that. I think it is. So let's do a little cold and dark and take off and just see how she performs. So to start with, apparently there's a bug for some people that doesn't allow you to do a cold and dark. So you've just got to use your key command to start the engine. But I haven't had that problem so far. Well, sorry, I did have that problem initially, but that's now gone away. So that's always nice. So we're going to start in this panel here. We're going to go main switch, alternators, fuel pump. Nice. We've got that little initiation sound, which is always good. That sound stays with you the entire time. It can get annoying. Let's get our strobe, nav, pitot heat, taxi light. All good. Might as well do all of them. I'm just going to set my prop all the way forward and my mixture rich, and then we're going to go 10%, 12%. Sure. Let's get our flaps back to take off. Our avionics are on. And that's really it. Let's just make sure our parking brake's on. Set parking brake. Really weird parking brake. The worst parking brake I've ever seen in my life, but that is just the way the aircraft is modelled. We can use these de-icing, your master AC as well, and your landing gear lever. Also, we have another landing gear lever here, and they do go at the same time. So that's interesting. I don't know if they've got one over here. Can't see it, but no. Other thing you can do is get up the armrests, get your fuel in the right tanks. Don't turn it off. I've got it on the left tank at the moment, so I'm happy with that. Oh, let's not use our trim by accident. That is so frustrating sometimes. There we go. Still using it. Got to click on something else to get out of that. That is a common theme with looking around these cockpits, is that you will accidentally just move the trim. So that trim, hopefully, is in takeoff. Yeah, got it in takeoff. So let's start this baby. And this is quite nice, really, because you do have to hold it. There we go. All started up. Let's get that volume up just a little bit so you can hear. Not a bad sounding plane. So apparently these sounds are stock from ASBO. I think they sound pretty good. I mean, that kind of sounds like a muscle car, but I've never flown one of these, so I wouldn't know what it sounds like. Sounds legit. Anyway, let's get to the end of the runway and see how she performs up in the air. Right, at the end of the runway. So, make sure everything's looking good. Yep, nice, nice. Still got that noise whining in the background. That's really, really annoying, but it will stay with you your entire life as you fly the aircraft, but it's just one of those things. So, let's get going. Right, so it should rotate at about 70 plus, depending on whether you've got a headwind or not, and yeah. Nice, let's not hit this building in front. There we go. Oh, that's a close one. Oh, my goodness. Beautiful evening though. So let's climb before we crash. So like I said, climbs pretty well. Anything between 1,500 feet a minute, 2,500 feet a minute, at about 120 or so. So pretty good. Nice. And we have some altitude errors here, as we always do. What a lovely evening. Right, so in terms of how this plane performs, it's it's just a bit of a beast really. It's relatively powerful, pretty hard to turn. You're not going to be doing aerobatics in this. It can't fly upside down, I'm afraid. You're going to overspeed it and you're going to destroy the airframe. It's just a cruiser, you know. It's going to climb well, it's going to cruise beautifully, and what more can be said? It's a standard aircraft. It's a little bit like the Cherokee Warrior, and yeah, some of its other competitors. And that's it really. It's a very stable aircraft to fly. It trims well, and you can just keep on going. So if that's what you want it for, go for it. Now hopefully there's going to be some updates for this. They're going to fix some of these weird little bugs that it's got. Maybe let's have a different interior, please. None of that leather. Let's go for something that's maybe a little bit more refined. But that said, this is the type of aircraft it is. Anyway, if you like the content, obviously subscribe. Pop a like in or dislike if you didn't like it. That's how it works. And apart from that, have a great day. Bye.